Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of ask you a few questions about your experience with evil. I know you've dealt with a lot of criminals and court cases and kind of more white collar crimes. But yeah, no, this is kind of a broad topic. But what's your just kind of personal experience with evil in your work?
Yeah. Early in my career, before I really started focusing on public corruption, I actually dealt with a number of serial killers along the way. And I would say in at least two of the cases, I felt I was in the presence of evil when I was talking to those serial killers. Now, some would say I was actually in the presence of severe mental illness. So, was that evil? Was that mental illness? What was it? Both? I don't know, but you definitely got a sense that these individuals just had a different moral compass from the rest of us. And but then as I got into doing public corruption and focusing on that more, there were, there have been people who, struck me as being evil. And I think the thing they have in common, the serial killers and the people involved in white collar crime, public corruption, is a lack of empathy for others, a narcissism where their feelings are the only things, are the only feelings that matter, an inability to see the world from someone else's worldview. And I think that's what the serial killers and the white collar criminals have in common, is just an inability to see the world from the perspective of the other.
Yes, I would agree with that. The dark triad, where it's basically like Machiavellianism, narcissism, and I think one of them's sadism or something like that. But yeah, it's kind of like they have like a short circuit in their brain where they just don't feel that kind of empathy for others.
Right.
The first question I'd like to ask you is, what is a crime you have covered that truly personifies evil?
I can think of a couple. One would be serial killer Bruce Mendenhall, who was caught in the Nashville area and was convicted of killing prostitutes, essentially. He would hit truck stops, pick these women up, and then kill them. And he's serving a life sentence. And I corresponded with him, and he is just a mean, evil person that never showed any remorse, would never admit any guilt, and I think just had a lot of hate in his heart. And the other one is Jason Burdick, the Wooded Rapist, another very high-profile case locally where he terrified neighborhoods here in Middle Tennessee, sneaking into homes late at night and raping women when they were home alone. He was finally caught, and I did get to do an exclusive interview face-to-face with him. Mendenhall, we exchanged letters, and Burdick just flat out lied to my face. Cold, calm, never showed any remorse. Not sure he even really, felt anything about what he did. And so both of those people struck me as evil.
One guy in particular, a guy named Henry Hodges, he had killed multiple people on the outside world, and then when he got into prison, he continued killing. And he would describe to me his murders in great detail, and there was almost a sense of pride.
My takeaway is that they're not committing these evil crimes oftentimes because they're after money or revenge necessarily. There's just something inside them that makes them want to hurt people or do something awful, or maybe they feel insecurities, but they're trying to feed some dark desire inside them that normal people like you and I wouldn't understand, and they'll do anything to get it. You know, murder someone, and Mendenhall took flesh trophies. He kept from the people he killed. Well, what's that all about? I mean, that's just sick and evil. And so that's where I think it comes from. It's more an emotion and this dark desire that they just have to fill that need.
How is white collar crime, like specifically like embezzlement, for example, different than a physical crime like murder when it comes to being evil? Like, are they both kind of the same? I mean, or they, you know?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of degree.
Yeah.
There are individuals who could never see themselves committing a murder, but they would have no hesitation at all about completely devastating someone financially. And I think it's just wherever that line exists in that person's psychology of how far are they willing to go. You know, and I think it's very possible in some cases that, you know, as one stretches the boundaries of what they're willing to do, then perhaps, you know, one could lead to the other. The individuals who are stealing money, you know, if they fear being caught, then, you know, perhaps they could rationalize, okay, well, maybe I could kill.
Based on your years of covering crimes and trials, do you think it's actually possible for someone to commit a horrible crime and not recall it?
You mean just forget about it, or try to forget?
I mean, do you think like, yeah, like just like they commit a crime and they either, it's not like they lie about it, but do you think like for the case of the Waffle House shooter, like he kind of just, you know, he wasn't there, like he was there, but it wasn't really him. Like he was like schizophrenic.
Yeah, well, okay. We start talking, let's face it, anyone who commits these kind of crimes has something wrong upstairs. But when you start talking about mental illness, and I believe that the potential is there if there's a trauma or a situation that's so great that someone could maybe commit some kind of awful crime and have a psychic break and maybe not remember it. Maybe not remember it. Now, in the Waffle House case, Ranking was claiming that he was not guilty by reason of insanity. He remembered or knew what he did, but he didn't recognize was his argument that it was wrong. Okay. The jury didn't buy that. They felt, hey, he knew it was wrong because after he did this, he ran off and hid.
Right.
That tells you he thought it was wrong. But I think there have been other cases potentially where someone does something awful for whatever reason in a moment of high stress and maybe has a psychic break and potentially really doesn't remember what happened. And maybe if they did remember that they actually did it, it would horrify them.
Maybe like someone decompartmentalized it and kind of forgot about it just because it would have given themselves PTSD.
Right. You know, a good example is like exactly like maybe soldiers that come back from combat who have had to do horrible things. And sometimes they come back and they bear what they did so deeply that it's not there. Now it manifests itself in other ways and it can cause real problems, but they bury it. So they kind of get it. And then maybe something when they're back in civilian life, they hear a gunshot or something and that triggers it and the memories come rushing back and they have a nervous breakdown. So yeah, I think people can try to bury horrible thoughts like that, but I don't think evil people do that. I think evil people don't bury it because I think they like what they're doing.
Do you find that most serial killers have more or less remorse than, let's say, like a white collar criminal?
My experience has been white collar people tend to have more remorse when they're caught, because they tend to be in a different place in life. They tend to have a higher stature in life, and so getting caught is embarrassing, and they're more likely to express remorse whether they actually feel it or not. Usually when they're caught, that's sort of the go-to defense.
Yeah.
That when you're caught, you express remorse. The question is, do they learn from their mistakes? I can say honestly, I have encountered people where I felt the remorse was real.
Mhm.
There have been occasions where I have busted people for corrupt activities where they have later become contacts, become sources, and I really feel like that they learn from their mistakes. There are others to this day who hate my guts simply because they cannot own their own behavior.
I mean, someone I consider who's evil is, someone who hurts someone else for the sole purpose of hurting them.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No other reason.
There's the whole Columbine shooters. The Clay Bowl or whatever his name was, this more intelligent one. He kind of got along with this other guy, and so he kind of talked him into committing these terrible acts of violence.
Yeah.
And that's the one example I was just kind of thinking of, like. And then there's also, I guess, maybe like bigger whole like groups of society, like, in Nazi Germany, like they kind of like this whole like group think kind of persuaded them to go after the Jews, I guess. But
yeah, or any gang mentality. You're in a gang.
Yeah.
You might end up doing something when you're with a gang and they're all acting at once that you would never do by yourself. And that's what you have to be careful of. You have to be, it takes courage when someone, and there's a gang that's all doing something that's wrong and you're with them. It takes courage to say, I'm not doing that.
Mhm.
A lot of people just go along with the flow and let it ride. And then they, of course, regret it later. And it's always going to be here. It's not something that's just now or was in the past or it's going to go away in the future. There's always going to be evil, and I just important to recognize it when it's there and deal with it and then try to stand up to it, but it's nothing new. It's just when you get to see it up close, or gosh, if it happens to you personally, it's horrible, but I think it's a good thing to talk about and not ignore, that's for sure.